All right. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, fighters of all ages. This is Struggle Vision Pineapples, and I'm here with my friend.
Crescent Novaspec.
And we are proud to present the official first episode of the HomeGrown podcast.
The maiden voyage has begun, and what the Homegrown podcast is basically our own homegrown style. It is a representation of the local fighting game community, the esports fighting game community, and everything in between, trying to bridge the gap.
Yeah, to take advantage of the benefits that come with the commercialization and the stability of sponsors in the FGC, while still making sure we keep up with our roots for locals, grassroots scenes, and essentially non-professional fighting game community events.
Mm-hmm. There has been a lack of major consistent podcasts that really touch on all issues related to the fighting game community, and even some issues that don't relate, but we are hoping that we can fill that void and produce content that would fill that void.
Not to mention, like, something to help people who may not necessarily be as in the know about the FGC find something to onboard them. I know it's something that can be very intimidating, is coming into a genre like fighting games, which from the outside seem just like a mash fest, but once you get inside, you realize it's pretty layered.
Mm-hmm.
So, thanks for coming along for the ride. And we have some really cool topics today, at least in my opinion, some cool topics. The first one I wanted to talk about, I know you're a dirty console player, so this may not be as effective for you, but for me, I want to talk about the Street Fighter V netcode patch that just dropped.
It is effective for me because it's not official, and you PC Master Race boys took advantage of a broken system, made it better for us, and now y'all are basically segregating the PS4 players to where you want to play PC only because you don't want to deal with the horrible rollback that it like makes it 10 times worse if you're on PC. You get this patch.
Yeah, essentially what it does is, because I've been doing some testing for it. Essentially what it does is it kind of hybridizes the rollback netcode that Capcom set up and turns it into this like pseudo delay based netcode like from Street Fighter 4. And so because the original system for Street Fighter V checks for the average frame delay at the end of the round to try to normalize it, it just ends up shoveling all the problems onto the PlayStation or whoever doesn't have the patch.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel like the PC community is really, what's what I'm looking for, exiling the console community, because like at the end of the day, this was something that should have been fixed 4 years ago by Capcom. Mike Z, the dude who made Skullgirls, called out what this problem was back during the beta. He was like, hey, you've got a leakage here. There's essentially a monitor for the clock of the game checking against the two clocks of the players' games when reading inputs. And one is just kind of allowed to get as far ahead as they want, and that's a problem, right? Like, when you, like if you have like two solo cups with a string, the more string you put between the cups, the harder it is to understand what's being said. The same thing can be said here.
The biggest issue with this is that this wasn't just a call out by a head developer from another fighting game. This was also feedback, constant feedback from the community, posting videos, making rants on Twitter, and literally anything. Their top players have cried over how bad the Street Fighter V netcode is, and there's video proof of it just anywhere on Twitter. You can find it because people have been so heated about this because Street Fighter V is such a bare bones fighter that every little thing matters in that 60 frames per second that you have to make each decision count. And if you make one frame of error, you get crush countered and lose the game. And it's very disheartening for people who want to get better at this game to just have one mistake like that when factor of the internet affect their overall gameplay and the way that they see that they're progressing, because some people only have online to go by progression and they don't have a local scene or anybody else to play with offline.
I mean, not just that, but like the game was very clearly designed to be about aggression. Like, take a look at Dhalsim. Like, he is your long limb keep away character, and the way he plays is instant air teleport pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is up until Poison being the first, I believe, successfully designed character that can play the keep away game in the very, not just footsie, but literal keep away that actually succeeds, and Poison's very good at it. And so when you've got a game with netcode like this, where it is prone to these hiccups and teleportations because it's trying to read inputs literally like what, maybe 80 frames to 150 frames from the 150 milliseconds from the past, that's a problem. It kills me too, because this really was such a simple fix. Like, I don't know if you've read the Git repository for the mod.
No.
But he props to the modder. I don't know if he's ever going to listen to this, but like, bang up job to you, especially because he worked without the source code. But essentially what the fix was, from what I was reading, was he essentially assigned a variable to shoehorn its way into the process for when the netcode checks against the timestamp of inputs to ensure that it's being placed into the queue at the right time. And instead of letting a unit go as far ahead in the future as it wants, usually the better computer, it just says, hey, you gotta wait for the other computer. You know? It was a very simple fix. He literally just said, don't get higher than 2. And there's still some issues. It's not perfect. It's still a Band-Aid solution. But that one guy in 2 days made a significant increase in the stability of the platform. And for 4 years, like you said, people have been crying. That's been the biggest shakeup around Street Fighter V. Even though, like, I think there were some design decisions that I didn't like. What really made it the hardest was that if you didn't have a local scene to play it with, you just kind of had to deal with the online until you got to the higher ranks, where it was a much more consistent volley of people with decent internet.
Yes, but people didn't want to commit to that grind whenever there was already such a negative perception around Street Fighter V initially. The bad netcode just helped seal its fate with a lot of 09ers and people who came from Street Fighter 4 transferring over to Street Fighter 5. It was a very, very rough patch. And the thing is, the worst part about this is that once this modder released his patch, finally we have gotten some kind of response from a producer at Street Fighter 5
That was
about
Ono, huh?
Like, Ono himself finally made some kind of response, and he responded whenever the initial leaks of Poison, Honda, and Lucia came out, because he was very upset about that wasn't supposed to happen. And unlike that, this PC netcode fix was not supposed to happen either, and he's recently came on Twitter saying that he's noticed what's happening. It was a very vague post, but most people know it's probably about the online features and the patch that just came out. So either they are going to retcon that whole patch and make it not work anymore, or they're going to fix the whole thing entirely. Whichever, I'm not holding my breath on Capcom doing anything, because it's been this long and Street Fighter is in the last leg of its life. One of my favorite tweets about this whole thing, Brian F. made a tweet during Capcom Cup, during the Pocky side event, saying someone had to program, debug, code, and test Pocky mode, but we still cannot get any word about why online is the way it is. And that is one of my top 10 favorite FGC tweets of 2019.
You know what kills me about the online is that I feel like this goes back to, it's an Eastern specific thing. Like, for one thing, I'm sure the netcode they have works fine-ish for Japan to Japan. The Street Fighter netcode alternates between central server connections and peer-to-peer, but Japanese connections are pretty good because they already are rocking like a 10G connection. Their infrastructure for internet is so good, but the system in place is garbage for America. And then you've got this solved. GGPO came out 10 years ago as its own standalone client to play like MAME emulators. And like, look at some of the games that have come out recently, like Fight of Animals, a $6 literal meme fighter. Like, you know, like the meme with like the muscle dog and like the cat that looks like it's folding its arms. Yeah, they literally just turn those into like these little 2-button fighters, but they put well implemented GGPO netcode, and the online for that game feels like local. And people bought it. People bought this joke fighter.
I've been seeing combo videos around on Twitter.
Yeah, because like it's funny for one. Yeah, it helps. But more importantly,
breaks up the monotony.
It works. Them fighting herds. It's another one. It dropped. I think it's like main 6. you've never heard about this, right?
No.
So for the uninitiated, Them's Fightin' Herds was originally a My Little Pony fan fighter. Supposed to be very kind of like anime-esque, but it was sued by, I think, Hasbro, who owns My Little Pony, and they weren't allowed to use the character sprites that they made anymore.
They gave the Nintendo ban to them?
Yeah, they gave them the Nintendo ban. And so, I forgot the name of the lady, like something Foster, whoever it is that did the character design for them for My Little Pony, and like some of the voice actors came to help them make new custom characters, and they got this game out. But what the best part about this game was that it came out implementing GGPO netcode, and the lobby system operated very similar to the Arc System Works lobby system, in which you could run multiple games in one lobby at the same time. And that was fantastic. The game was phenomenal for those two features alone. It took two solved problems from across the years of the FGC and combined them into something small that was consumable and enjoyable. And that's something that AAA titles just don't seem to want to do.
Like, debatably, which fighting game would have the best online... What mainstream fighting game has the best online netcode? I would say Tekken, maybe?
No.
No?
Nope. Tekken operates very oddly. Tekken also does a pseudo delay based situation where it'll freeze the game if it gets too far separated. The one saving grace, though, and this has happened before, is that Tekken has a desync failsafe button. And the way this works is that if the game recognizes that it's just getting too bad, it will actually cut the connection between the two players, shovel in an AI for the opponent player, and then continue the match. And so one match will essentially split into two separate matches that can have two separate results. There have been times where I was in a lobby match where I was playing my friend, and we both won the match because we got desynced. And so that's better than the situation currently at hand, but it's still not good. They're still operating on the same delay-based code that makes the Naruto games so bad, that makes Soul Calibur so bad.
Dragon Ball Z is still having issues. I see people complain about that.
Arc Systems has a survey in which they're like, do you guys really want rollback netcode? And people are like, yes, we really do. And they have the gall to be like, well, I don't know if it's going to fit. And I understand it's not as simple as just patching it in. It's not. Because you have to construct the game from the ground up, understanding this is the network framework we're going to use. But for years we've been saying, hey, the delay-based system in GG Rev 2 is trash. It's bad. It fluctuates too hard. Sometimes your game will move from being an 8-frame delay to a 2-frame delay. So having to variably adjust your muscle memory mid-match is insane. And with 2020 being the year they're releasing Grand Blue, they're doing their first ever official online qualifier. You didn't pay attention to that, you said, right?
No.
So, once again, for those of you who play anime, you may already know this. For some of you who don't, very recently, during one of the most recent reveals at the Arc Revo World Finals, when they revealed GG20, they talked about their plans for GG 2020, or Strive. It's Strive. They talked about their plans for 2020. And one of the things they want to do for Grand Blue Versus, and for I think all their games, is that they want to offer up more online qualifiers to get points to qualify for the splits for the Arc Revo World Tour, which is fantastic. I think opening this up to people who don't necessarily have a very large scene locally is fantastic. But when you've got a framework like what Arc Systems Work has been using for the past 4 years, 5 years, we start entering some weird territories. Because for those of you who have played, you know I'm not exaggerating when I say those games can get bad. So if they're not willing to implement the solved solution that is rollback netcode, why would players have faith in the stability of their online qualifiers?
And that's the biggest issue, is that I think Street Fighter V is finally going to take a look at this, because the Olympics are coming up very soon and they are all online. The Street Fighter amateur qualifiers are all online. there's so many events that Street Fighter V is banking on, like increasing its popularity and its ability to let everybody join in and play, but at the cost of it being on a jank online system.
Yeah, the positive feedback when that patch drop was insane. I don't know if you were paying attention to Twitter, but like people who have been dogging on Street Fighter for years were like, suddenly I want to play this. The game is actually in a decent state. It's enjoyable right now. It's really in the best state I think it's ever been in my opinion.
It's finally a finished game
Yeah,
after 4 years.
After 4 years. It's just still not playable outside of local.
Yeah.
Consistently, anyway. And so I'm sure Capcom noticed, oh, I see our players are actually having fun now. This looks good for business. Maybe we should listen. But it shouldn't have got to that point. That's my whole stance on it.
No, we shouldn't have had to wait this long, and Capcom shouldn't have ignored everybody for that long of time whenever every other issue related to the game was taken feedback and addressed by Capcom in some way or another, but never the online code. That was one thing we were just constantly left in the dark with for the longest time, and hopefully with an indie coder coming out and doing something about it, maybe that'll light a fire under Capcom to do something about it themselves.
I'm glad we're on like the topic of online, because it brings up my next point that I want to talk about today, which was online versus locals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because when you have examples, like for the longest time, it was like, oh, you'll never be able to amount to anything unless you go to your locals. And generally speaking, it was because online was just not consistent. It was very unstable. Even Street Fighter V, in its best matches, is still not as good as local face-to-face experience. But someone like Punk, who when he first came out as an online warrior. He was very well known for being a ladder climber. And then he's getting, second at EVO, second at CPT this year.
Shada became the most consistent Street Fighter V player out there. He had the most CPT points of all time, I think, Punk.
Yeah.
I think they took the whole record across 4 seasons, and he has been the top. And even in Season 4, he was top 1, I believe, at the very end. Even though IDOM won Capcom Cup, Punk was the favorite to take it just because of his consistent results and how well he was doing with Karen at the time. Punk started out as an online warrior, but much like, it's not the fact of it being online, it's what you do with the online play. It's either you choose to go into random ranked matches, fight people at random, and just learn random matchup knowledge, or you can sit down with a friend and be like, hey, you got an hour to spare? Let's run a first to 10. So you can learn set play, so you can learn opponents' habits, conditioning, not stuff that would entirely matter in a first to 2 set, but you would learn more of the game's meta and deeper stuff in a first to 10. There's so many different ways that you can use online, but most good players will use online as just a gauntlet. IDOM, before he won Capcom Cup, he got a 100 win streak on ranked match in Street Fighter V with the bad netcode, playing a heavy mix-up character that, if you make one right guess against her, she can lose a good bit of health. So online is very beneficial in that way, but with locals, you get more of a personal experience.
You think it's more of a quality over quantity experience?
Mm-hmm. It's what you do at the time.
Right, to play devil's advocate, I do want to, and I love going my locals, but I do want to test some of the benefits of being a player now with online. Perfect example being Tekken. Have you seen the system they've implemented now? They have a system in place where you can toggle on the frame data while watching someone else's matches. The replay system's coming out soon where it will take your recordings and it'll show you, hey, you missed a punish here. Hey, this was a good block, but you could have done this, this, and this.
The game is going to automatically dissect your gameplay.
The game is going to teach you when they were negative. And that's going to be insane, because a lot of the benefit of going to locals was that you could have that face-to-face. Like, if someone does a mix-up on you, they could stop the game and be like, hey, listen, if I put you in this situation, here are my options, here's where my frame data is, you need to decide what to do from there. With games coming into 2020 and coming into the future like this, I feel like they're making more steps to push people towards that quality over quantity play. And while I do believe infrastructure is still not up to the point where you can get to the same degree of benefit from your matches, it's hard to say that online isn't to some degree just as potentially beneficial as going to your locals.
Yeah, we're not back in the dark ages whenever we had Super Smash Bros. Brawl Internet or the initial Street Fighter 4 lobbies and netcode for vanilla Street Fighter 4. That was a trip. But like, you want to talk about how bad Street Fighter 5's netcode was? You don't remember Street Fighter 4 at the beginning. It was a rough time.
Even now, on the PC version and the PS4 version, it's still not the best. But it's I feel like 2020 is going to get there. I think maybe now companies are starting to listen. And I really hope companies see the backlash that hit Street Fighter when they realized, when players realized you could have been working on this for 4 years. This wasn't some heavily ingrained issue. It was loose, lazy coding.
I think Street Fighter V is the perfect redheaded stepchild of the 2016 fighting game era because companies have been constantly... I think every company can just look at Street Fighter V as a what not to do example.
They've had a lot of really negative public incidents. Well, that being said, it's still a fun game. Like, especially going like playing it in person is pretty fun. Especially now, I'm really enjoying it.
It's at a very good point in the season where a lot of characters are considered overall balanced. There are still some good S tier characters, but the meta has become more diverse with V-Skill 2s, and the game is more dependent on matchup knowledge, to where either local or online play, online play is even better now because we have organized places like Discord, Twitter, and other areas where you can just seek out specific matches that you want to play. If you want to play against this certain character or somebody at a high level, you can seek out those players, and if they're willing to do so, they can grind games with you and run first to 10 sets in lobbies.
Can I say that Discord has been a godsend for poverty fighting games?
Yes.
Like, if your game didn't take off, it used to be hell to find play. You would have to bring it to locals and essentially foster the community yourself. But like Sam Show being a perfect example. If the Sam Show Discord didn't exist, playing that game would be miserable. The online, it's SNK netcode. So the online's bad. On its best days, it's bad. On its worst days, it's borderline unfunctional. Western players just don't play it anymore, so generally you're getting EU and like Korea and Japan. And that's such a long connection on SNK netcode, so that's miserable. But the Discord just makes it so easy to play. Games like Punch Planet, which I'm going to take a moment to say, try that game out. $10 on Steam. The best way to describe it is it's like Cyberpunk Street Fighter 4 with an easier FADC cancel system. Very good game. But that game, the Discord is always going off looking for group. Pocket Rumble, Blade Strangers. Like, if a fighting game comes out and it is not la creme de la creme, has like company support, an esports circuit, generally speaking, it's not going to be the popular one. But you can still find those matches in these communities dedicated to these games. And that's amazing. That is so... That's definitely one of the boons of online play in our current era, is that no game is ever really dead.
As long as you can find somebody to match up with you in a ranked match or a battle allows to join, your game is not dead.
Yeah. Same thing for like legacy games too, like a Fightcade, bless Fightcade. Make sure you get your ROMs legally.
Street Fighter 4 still has matches going on and a full Facebook and Discord server just specifically for that game.
Yeah, like it's one of the it's probably my favorite benefit is that the longevity of games has been increased. And like, yeah, for every Marvel vs. Capcom, you had some no-name fighter that just went unnoticed. But now, that doesn't really happen. You know, like, no, it's not going to be on the billboards, but you'll always be able to find that dedicated community. And that's just fantastic.
And if you can't find that community, it's more about congregating them, getting them to
you can
come
make
out
that community.
You can build the scene by bringing your games out and just getting people to join in and play with you.
Well, that's the benefit of locals, though. I feel like, and it's weird too. Like it's a lot harder to, in my opinion, convince people to play a game via online than it is face to face. I've converted a lot more people face to face than I have over the internet. Mm-hmm. A perfect example is KI. It's really hard to convince people on the internet to play KI, even though KI is absolutely amazing. KI being the perfect example of like well implemented netcode and an amazing game, kind of screwed over by the fact that it was an Xbox exclusive, and Xbox just kind of did not do well this era. Pray for Scarlet. But when I go in person, I'm like, hey, you want to play KI? Or Power Rangers. Power Rangers is another one. There's a Discord community for Power Rangers, and like they're really nice. Like they generally want to play. There's a lot of cool tech. But when you go to like a chat about fighting game players, like, hey, you want to play Power Rangers? People are like, no, I don't want to play Power Rangers. Like, well, I don't want to play Power Rangers. But when you go in person and you're like, hey, look how fun this game is, and they can see it, right? They can visibly see it, not YouTube videos.
You don't send them a link and they don't click it.
Exactly. When someone can put their hands on the product, it is immediately accessible to them. And that's a feeling that helps elicit the drive to continue to play. I don't think I could have gotten half of Dallas on Blade Strangers if I hadn't brought it that one time to locals.
Mm-hmm. That one person who brought out the Xbox One to locals and still made Killer Instinct a thing, kudos to them, because they are the reason that the little bit of local communities left for that game still exists.
They're the reason Combo Breaker is still as big as it is.
Mm-hmm, they're the reason that a major exists for that game specifically to make KI still a home name.
And speaking of which, I'm so excited for Combo Breaker. Combo Breaker being the last paragon of the KI scene, really. And it's watching the turnout there every year is so fantastic to see the love that people still have for that game. And in large part, a lot of that love goes back to our original topic of it's playable. Mm-hmm. You can actually go into a match and play people who are better than you. And it's not just like, oh, well, I lagged. It's like, oh, well, they beat me up.
No,
maybe
learning.
I should figure out. Yeah.
You're learning the mechanics. You're learning matchup knowledge, frame data, and where you're faulting in your own play so that you can prepare. And whenever you have the chance, you can go to a major and compete at the high level against all these big players at a local setting, so you don't have to play them online. And this transitions into our other topic, which is locals versus majors.
Yeah, I know this topic kind of came up for me because in the Louisiana chat that I'm in, a Balrog player that I will not name was talking to another Balrog player that I will not name. And they were discussing whether or not going to majors actually mattered. One player is cutting his teeth against the best of the best and getting his casuals in and whatnot, and the other one's focusing on their stream. And so both of them have very, very realistic goals with defined routes. And one of the things that I noticed when I was talking to them is that they can both find benefits for their goals in both situations. Mm-hmm. One of the big benefits that for me personally anyway, about going to majors is that it's fun. It's like going to a convention almost. The majors are essentially just an anime convention or a music show or insert any kind of social gathering here, just prefaced with tournaments and gameplay. Mm-hmm. You know, you're congregating to a place, a central location, with a bunch of people with a similar hobby or interest. It's an easy way to make friends, make contacts. You know, if you're trying to maybe bolster your brand and become a content creator for the genre you enjoy, that face-to-face contact is very important with humanizing yourself and building that audience.
Mm-hmm. And even if you're not looking for that long game of fame and Twitch notoriety or more Twitter followers, you can just go just to play games. My favorite thing about Combo Breaker is that they're one of the few events that has a 24-hour venue, so that those 3 days that you paid to be at that event, you can make all 72 hours worth it and just constantly grind games with people and get as much information as you can from that event, much comparatively to a local level.
Yeah, Combo Breaker is like a love letter to the FGC. Out of the big three, right? In my opinion, the big three would be Combo Breaker, CEO, and Evo. The best way to kind of describe them is that Evo is the Super Bowl of the FGC. People go because they love fighting games, but people also go because it's in Vegas and it's a spectator thing. It's a once a year kind of big bonanza.
It's a big stadium with like a
Yeah,
rounded arena.
the production quality is phenomenal. Then you got CEO, and CEO is more like CEO is more like what the Super Bowl would be for fighting games if only people who gave a shit about fighting games showed up. Because you still have high production quality. You still have Jabali Land. It's still one of the more prominent fighting game tournaments. It doesn't have the numbers that Evo brings, but what it makes up for is kind of like the heart and spirit. And because there is less people that show up for that than say Evo, it's a bit more personable. You're not just kind of fumbling around looking for pools, risking getting lost. A lot of less shenanigans happen. It's more consistent, which has its own kind of benefits in that scenario.
CEO is much more of a is also a grassroots tournament in a way because they see the fighting game genre as the spectacle sport that it can be. The stage for CEO has always been a wrestling arena that competitors have to go under a rope and sit in the middle of the arena. Like there's no leaps or bounds to what you can't do in that arena. Back in 2011, Mike Ross broke down a cage because they were having a caged Marvel 3 money match, and he got a Sentinel comeback and just went ham on the cage and even just broke it off or whatever. Some people will like stand on the ropes and like start doing WrestleMania poses or something at the audience. Like CEO is a proof that fighting games can be much more of a spectator sport than we believe. It can be more than just people sitting down, setting up their arcade sticks and just looking at the screen.
I mean, a spectator sport that's less commercialized. Because I feel like Evo is a spectator sport too. It's definitely a spectator spectacle. Like when you want to be like, this is what fighting games could be. You would show them Evo, especially if they don't know what's going on, because it's lights and cameras and it's so beautiful to look at. But and this is not a knock against Evo. Mr. Wiz does a great job. But if I really was to pick one of the bigger kind of spectacles with heart, it would be CEO. But of course, both of them lose out, to my opinion, Combo Breaker, because Combo Breaker is truly what grassroots FGC, in my opinion, is represented by. Same thing for Final Round, but Combo Breaker having the 24-hour casuals sets it above and beyond. Combo Breaker it's mainly a KI major, but it's got 24-hour casual setups. It's got the mystery tournament, the best mystery tournament of the year, where every round is a new game. And watching that is always fantastic because you get to see so many games of the genre that just don't normally get any light. Dang Dang Never Die or Dong Dong Never Die was a game that I had never heard about until I saw it in the mystery tournament, and I fell in love. It's like a Mortal Kombat rotoscoped Korean fan fighter, and it's so crazy, but it's absurd and it's beautiful. And I never would have heard about that without Combo Breaker, because it's not one of the prolific fighting games. It's not really your normal side tournament. It's something niche, and it's something very specific, and it's something that, as a real fighting game major, like more about the fighting games than anything else, of course they're going to give it the respect it deserves. It's part of the genre. Like, Combo Breaker is I can't wait to go to Combo Breaker. This is going to be my first year going. Like, I'm definitely going this year.
I'm very excited too. I'm hoping I can make the trip out after Final Round to Combo Breaker and all the other events that are going on this year. The CPT Pro Tour was announced, and it was kind of upsetting in a way. I'm not affected by it, but the people who are, I understand. The CPT Pro Tour this year is mainly centered on the East Coast, which is really, really disheartening for people on the West Coast, because everybody wants to say that California is one of the best places to go for anything, especially for fighting games. There are no CPT Premier tournaments in California or anywhere west of the Mississippi River besides Texas Showdown in Houston.
Right.
And that's a little upsetting, but
it's unfortunate. But there's still a lot of events that they can go to. It really stinks that it's not dispersed very evenly. But I guess that's one of the downsides of fighting games just growing to the size that they are, is that now it definitely is a lot harder to accommodate all the players. You used to, like back in the day, you used to have your smaller scenes, but everyone would make the pilgrimage to the meccas. Your SoCal, your NorCal, your Japan, your where's Evo held? Your Las Vegas, Battle in the Bay. But now, because it's budding, it's spreading, it's growing. So the drive to maybe offer up new venues is there at the risk of alienating some of your older scenes, maybe.
But I think Capcom is doing a decent job at expanding outside, not counting the U.S., but expanding outwards. There's 4 tournaments in Europe, 2 in Puerto Rico and one in Puerto Rico and San Juan, 1 in Australia, 1 in Singapore, and 2 in East Asia. So there's plenty of areas to go to get a chance to get the CPT points. It's just unfortunate that it is so diverse, and Street Fighter V has had such a wide appeal that we're like practically limited to how much we can expand while keeping in the budget of the game and the esports of it.
You know what's ironic?
What?
The solution to this routes back to what we talked about in the beginning, which was the online qualifiers that they had been beta testing. If they were willing to put in the effort to make the netcode serviceable, and like the best comparison I actually made on Twitter, someone was trying to get me to explain what was the hubbub about the mod. And so I said, Capcom made Street Fighter V. Let's call it a house, right? And so to close out the house, they made a door, which was the netcode. But they never added a doorknob. And so the door works. You can get through the door. But like, just because it's serviceable doesn't mean it's good. And then someone just decides, I'm going to put this in here as a doorknob. And now the door functions years better. And so people are now able to access the house.
Yep.
If they were actually willing to fix this door up, access to that house could make up for the lack of ability for actual major spots for CPTs. Mortal Kombat does a online qualifier, and Mortal Kombat's got decent netcode. It's very good for an in-house netcode. It's not perfect, but it's good. And they do online qualifiers. What's his name? Ninja Killer? Ninja Killer came out to CEO last year being like one of the best players in the online ranked ladder and qualifiers. And he did work. He did work offline like he did online. And it was the ability of those online qualifiers to really kind of give him the experience and the promotion to get out there in the first place. There's so much benefit from having functioning online. And this won't even kill majors. This shouldn't kill locals either. Like, those will still be needed. They fill their own respective spots. Locals being the community building, like the really family community building. Like Louisiana being the perfect example, that was a brotherhood, we were close. Mm-hmm. We carpooled, we hung out, we did more than just played fighting games together.
We had like 4 separate areas of the state all coming to one centralized area to play Tekken, Dragon Ball Z, Street Fighter, mystery games once in a while, and Marvel vs. Capcom, because that was a never dying game for the Louisiana scene. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was a fan favorite of the Louisiana scene for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And then majors, of course, were the larger scale community building. They were where you really got to see the scope of I would call it family, like the extended family of the FGC. You got to meet friends from all across the country. You got to meet new people. You got to gather experiences, cut your teeth against styles and fighting styles that were grown in the different regions, you know? No two scenes really fought alike. And with the online qualifier, you can bring all that together much easier. You can have that community building, and you can have that accessibility from the comfort of your own home. And I think that's something that fighting games really need to actually give in on. Like the time of the old is done. Like Harada not giving the full move list and leaving in hidden moves and not giving frame data is gone. It's time to move with the times, and the times now is that like we can have onlines exist alongside majors. So that's just my opinion on that, though. I know I rambled a bit about online.
Hey man, we're keeping in the topics, so that's all that matters here.
Yeah, I mean it's a conversation, you know. Like I'm cool with just kind of letting it go with the flow. I think it's another cool thing is that like there's so many diverse opinions in the FGC. I'm sure like there are people who are listening now who don't agree with me, and if you don't, like, feel free to reach out to us at FGC Pineapples. I believe yours is
at Novaspec on Twitter.
At Novaspec. Let us know you don't agree. Let us know you do agree. Like, tell us what you think. You know, like I want Homegrown to truly be a bridge, and a bridge is not a place for two people to just walk across. It's a place for everyone to really plant their roots and to travel, to find that connection.
To understand the grassroots where they came from, but not be afraid to bloom into something bigger and better.
Yeah. Respect the past, but be excited for the future, you know? And that's something that's going to be beautiful to watch.
And speaking of the future events we have planned for this upcoming season.
Oh, yeah, the season's starting soon, huh? Mm-hmm. KIT just happened.
Yep.
So that was insane. Did you watch any of that?
I only got a little bit of Street Fighter V pulls watching the Louisiana scene going through.
Arslan Ash showed up for Tekken? Arslan Ash.
I do not know Tekken.
Oh, man. All right, so everyone pay attention. Arslan Ash is amazing. He is the first person to win 2 EVOs in 1 year. He won EVO Japan and EVO. He's the dude from Pakistan, the Pakistani Tekken player who came out of nowhere.
Okay,
just swamped Korea. And the Koreans flew down and ran gauntlet in Korea, and he smashed him. And he's not even, according to him, he's not even the best. Awais Honey, I think it's his name, the Akuma player, is also kind of coming out of Pakistan. And the lore behind Pakistani Tekken is insane because they've only ever come out of the shadows once before. And I believe it was in 2012, back during Tekken Tag 2. Mm-hmm. There was a Pakistani player who came out, beat ass, and then disappeared because it's very hard to get a passport and to travel out of Pakistan and to get a visa for that. And it's one of the benefits of esports, you know, for some of the negatives that it has. One of the benefits is that now you have these companies that are like, hey, we'll handle the rigmarole. You just go play your game. And so now you have people like Arslan who are able to travel to these events and to cut their teeth against like other countries. And for people like us, where it's been just years of, I bet I sound so excited right now, but it's been years of just Western Tekken and Eastern Tekken. You know, you have your Korean and Japanese Tekken, you have your Thailand and China, and you got Western Tekken. And they even like, and that's like UK and America. And for the longest time, with the mecca of Tekken has always been Korea, Green Arcade. Mm-hmm. You know, when people talk about going to do boot camps, where do they go? Korea, right? But now that's not the truth anymore because Pakistani Tekken is so different. The pacing is so unique. The way in which they digest the match and they stifle flow is so harsh against the flow that Tekken has been played for years now that it's truly catching some of the greatest players of our time off guard. These people are a genuine threat, and them being released into the oceans of the global Tekken scene means now there's a chance for that Tekken style to be digested and molded into the styles that already exist, and vice versa. Pakistani Tekken players can now digest Korean styles and what they learn from there, digest Western Tekken style. the globalization of Tekken has been cracked wide open in the past year and a half just because these guys have come out of the shadows. And that's amazing. That's so cool. And that's something that only really gets to happen with majors.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the sponsors. Like, it's awesome. So, Tekken was cool. Street Fighter 5 was cool. My boy, shout outs to Uncle Jay. I think that's the tag he goes by. John, he friend of mine from Struggle Vision. He's been making huge moves in the commentary scene. Got to do Tekken World Tour for KIT. I did too, but not top 8 like he did. And he's been traveling now. He's got the name out. People recognize him. You know, he's going places, and I'm proud of him. But he got to do commentary. I think there was a bunch of clips floating around when like Poke Chop was doing the money match against this dude he fought in Tekken pools. Like it was an amazing event to watch, and I'm so excited for the rest. Frosty Faustings is coming up too. Mm-hmm. Is that this week?
It might be this week. I think it's during the 20th.
Is it the 20th?
Yeah, it's not, probably 2 weekends from now. But that's January's events, KIT and Frosty Faustings.
Yeah, Frosty Faustings is the anime one, right?
Yes, more an emphasis on anime and a lot of other less known games. That Frosty Fausting has.
It's this weekend.
Never mind.
It's next weekend. It's during Satan.
Yes.
Yeah, it's during Satan.
What Satan is not the Lord of Evil. It is SYTYN. So You Think You Nice, a local tournament held at Louisiana based on power rankings and in specific games. The last 3 were held for Street Fighter V based on power rankings over each of the seasons, and now there is a new tournament being held for Samurai Showdown based on those power rankings over the first season of Sam Show.
I got invited. I feel really good about that.
Mm-hmm. You've been placing well, and you even did well at Crucial Alliance, and anytime you've been able to go down to Louisiana, you got your points in.
Yeah, I do love that game. I love that game so much.
Mm-hmm. But other than that, what other events are you going to?
So, my plans for the coming season, I want to go to Combo Breaker, just hands down. I want to go to Texas Showdown because it's in Houston. It's not too far from us. It's a CPT event, and I've been really enjoying Street Fighter V. Like I'm genuinely having fun with it. So I'm definitely going to compete. It's going to be fun. I want to get my points in with Tekken. I've been playing Ganryu. I think I'm enjoying him a lot more than I enjoyed Steve. So I'm excited to play some Texas Tekken.
Mm-hmm.
What else? So Texas Showdown, Combo Breaker. There's the King of the Sticks in Oklahoma. There's a lot of Oklahoma tournaments. Bit Wars that I want to do. They're not as big as the other two, but they're still, sizable tournaments from the Oklahoma area. They gather a pretty nice crowd. Slam is another one that I want to do. I hope that the timing is functional for me this year, but I would love to go back and do the South Louisiana major.
Mm-hmm.
It's always fun. It's always fun to see that scene, especially because that's where my roots were from. Yours too, if I'm correct.
Yep.
That's where you started. So it's always nice to see the boys, and the event is just fantastic. Once again, if y'all are going, hey, check out for us. We'll be around. I'm always down to play games.
Mm-hmm. Slam's dates are still being determined, but we are looking. I think tentatively it's in the middle of April in New Orleans, Louisiana.
It's gonna be in New Orleans. It was in New Orleans last time too. It was at that hotel.
Yeah, we upgraded from Baton Rouge to New Orleans after 2 years, so we're liking the new venue, and I think we're gonna be trying that again. Don't quote me on that because everything's still being determined.
Yeah,
right
but
now.
keep posting. With Smash GG and Challenge and like the ability for them to for tournaments to make their own pages, it's really, really easy for you to get that information out.
Oh yeah. And as far as my events that I'm going to, at least for the first half of the year, definitely Texas Showdown if I can make out to that. I'm also looking to go to DreamHack Dallas. That's going to be in later May, I believe.
Oh, I forgot about DreamHack Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
That one's pretty popping.
Finally coming here. It was in Austin last year, and
there was DreamHack Dallas last year too.
Oh wait, never mind.
Yeah, because that was the one where what's his name? Deoxys took MK. Deoxys the Dallas player.
Okay.
So that happened last year as well. I think Toy played in DreamHack Dallas too for Street Fighter.
Okay, so yeah, DreamHack, CEO for sure, Evo probably to end off the season, and also of course Slam, and I'm also gonna try and make it to Final Round this year, even though it's not a CPT event. Final Round was my very first major that I ever went to.
Was that your first?
Yes.
What year was that?
That was 2014.
Wow.
No. It was during Arcade Edition Street Fighter 4, whenever that first was released and Yun and Yang were out. Because I remember that's whenever Gin was one of the best characters in the game, and that's who I played.
Who'd you go with? Or you just go by yourself?
God, I took a car trip with 2 local players, Jason and Rasan, and my best friend LJ.
Wait. EMP BBW Messiah Rasan?
Yes.
How was that
BBW
car ride?
Messiah Rasan. That was a very interesting car ride. Much stories for later in Louisiana. Stories for later.
Yo, we 100% have to do an episode where we like get some of the GOL boys just to come out here. Well, that'll be the episode we drink on mic and we just go through lore for the LAFGC. Like, oh, there's some stories there.
People have slept on Louisiana, but that's just because it's so hard to get names out, especially during the Street Fighter 4 era. If you weren't SoCal, NorCal, or the East Coast, then you were nothing.
Or constantly placing.
Yeah, then you weren't even considered a scene at the time, and that's whenever fighting games were coming out, their dark ages. But yeah, nonetheless, the Louisiana FGC has so much lore behind it, and after that car trip with everybody, I made it to my first event, which was Final Round, and I made it to winners finals of my pool. And I choked twice in a row on stream whenever I had to play my winners finals match and then my losers finals match after on stream.
Well, what was that your first tournament ever, or was that just your first major?
That was my first major.
What was your first tournament?
My first tournament ever to be introduction into the fighting game scene was a Street Fighter 4 vanilla tournament held at a local game store in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Was it Sword and Board?
No, it was Play and Trade.
The one next door to it?
Yes,
Curls, right?
It wasn't Sword and Board at the time. No, Curls didn't run that. That was specifically ran just by Play and Trade, the owners and everything. Whenever Street Fighter 4 came out, because the fighting game genre was being revived, and they already had melee tournaments going on because that game has withstood the test of time.
Yes, shoutouts to Smash. I don't play your game, but
y'all,
I've never seen a more dedicated fan base.
Y'all do it better than the FGC, and that's upsetting, but
impressive.
It works consistently.
It's impressive.
Y'all make it work.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, that was the very first tournament I ever went to, and I got one victory with Vanilla Sagad doing jump roundhouse into Ultra, and that started my drive of like, maybe I want to get a little bit better at this game. Let me learn a combo that'll do 80% damage with Vanilla Sagat.
Vanilla Sagat was a mess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you were at my first tournament. My first tournament was actually at Play and Trade as well. I had just quit League of Legends because I had a friend who was challenger and would coach me, and I had finally because I've been playing since beta, but I didn't actually like try to get good till about 2013, and so he was like, "I'll teach you," and so it took me like from 2013 to 2016, I believe, because that's the year that Street Fighter came out, right? And I did it. I got good. I got to like diamond, some upper diamond, and I was still being miserable because like the players are just dicks. And I said, I want you to be honest with me. Does this get any better if I keep playing? And he told me no. I immediately deleted the game. I told him thanks for everything, and I did not play League again.
Damn.
I'm only just now getting back into it. And so I had this hole now in my heart where my competitive drive used to be, because that was my game. Like whenever I wasn't playing anything else, I would just go play League. I would grind League. I would learn League. And so I wanted to play something. And I saw Street Fighter 5 was coming out. And I was like, I'm going to play that. Bought me a Hitbox. Shout out to Hitbox. Best controller ever. Why would you play on stick when you could play with science?
Cheaters.
Sponsor me, Hitbox.
Look, he broke. He knows he's cheating.
No, dude, it's so good. But so I got me a Hitbox. Bought me a copy on PS4 and on PC. Bought it twice so I could play with everybody and with both systems. And I matched up with the Facebook group after asking, because I used to play fighting games in college, but not really much about it, but I was good friends with Stefan and Jarius, who are now pretty much the TO of Louisiana and the media director for the Arlington Esports Center.
And also the main guys behind Level
Slam
42 Gaming.
and Slam.
Yep. They're the ones. If you want to check them out, Level 42 Gaming on Twitch TV. They run local monthlies in Baton Rouge, second Sunday of every month.
Something like that. Yeah. But check them out. They're great. But anyway, I found the Facebook page, and I found a tournament at Play and Trade. And I went there, and I was supposed to be going with Ty Herbert. He was a 482 player at the time, but he ended up not going with me. So I just showed up by myself, and I met like Sleepy, Crucial B, GOL Mechanic, and I was a mess. I was a mess. I was crazy. I just did kind of whatever I wanted, and I went up against Crucial B, and I didn't do great. And LJ Mechanic was like, hey, listen, when you get him in the corner, do this combo, is optimal. And so by some God-given miracle, I stunned Crucial B. And I had the game-winning thing. And everyone was like, whoa, he's about to kill B. He's about to kill B. And I did jump Fierce Punch, down Fierce Punch, heavy kick Tatsu. No, it wasn't even heavy kick Tatsu. Whatever it was, I missed. And I just dropped that combo, and then B murdered me. And so my first tournament, I went 0-2. Damn. I got the entire crowd hype, and the entire crowd like, oh, boo, I can't believe we dropped the free ones in here. But that was my first ever tournament experience. I ended up going with those same people to Absolute Battle, a legacy of a bygone era. And that was my first major. But I'll always remember my first tournament more than that, because I remember thinking, even after I lost, that was so fun. And it made me want to keep playing.
Being around a community that was not afraid to get loud, and just this was still during the early Street Fighter V era, before esports professionalism kind of bled into the scene, and people were still just, oh, there's no stream going on, and there's no kids around. Let's just talk shit, be ignorant, and just like have a good time.
Yeah. Oh man. So I think. I mean, we've talked for a pretty good time. Like, I'm pretty happy where we're at. Before we send this off, though, like, now that I've mentioned that, I do want to kind of go out with an ode, a dedication to Crucial B. Brian McIntosh. Last year at Defend the North, he passed away. It was a pretty big thing in the community, whether it was about people just surprised that someone died at a major, or for the Louisiana scene, who really lost someone that built the scene up and kept everyone together and represented, in my opinion, what I think the FGC was about. And it was more than just about getting good. It was more than just about hitting buttons. It was about making friends. And the whole reason this podcast is coming to exist is because one day we were watching Co-op Cup at 2 a.m. And he looked at me and he said, we should make a podcast one day. And he unfortunately passed before we were ever able to do that. So this HomeGrown, it goes out to him. This was something he really wanted to give back to the community. And so I'm glad that you're with me to help deliver that dream on without him.
Crucial B did so much, and even though he didn't get the chance to make a podcast, he was still involved so much, not just in the community, but in every community member's lives in some way. There's people can tell you stories of times where B has gone out of his way to help them, not to learn frame data or the lore mix up that he beat them with. He came to help them change their tire, get them out of a bind, or help them out at a major when they needed like a place to stay or like something to do, someone to be with. B was always a friend to everybody, and I will miss him dearly. And I can safely say that he was the pillar, one of the strongest pillars in the Louisiana FGC. And we're not, just because he's no longer here, we're not letting the impact that he made on us like diminish or just go away, let it all be for naught. We're still the Louisiana fighting game community at heart, and we're still going to be making content, doing what we do Little War streams every month, and just still being around doing what we like to do: hit buttons, talk shit, and just
Be community first.
yes,
You know?
the FGC.
Yeah. And on that note, I think we're going to say goodbye. So thank you, FGC members, non-FGC members, those of you that stop by to listen to us talk. You're part of the community now. You know? Go out, hit buttons, have fun, and we'll see you next time on the HomeGrown Podcast.
And remember, GOL.
GOL.